everyone, this is Chris. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about glycerin. This is a great natural product that you're going to be able to use in your craft room for different projects, different utilities. So I have a very big bottle here. You don't have to buy a big bottle like this. You can also find smaller ones. And I'm really talking about glycerin, not Vaseline. This is natural. Vaseline is not. It comes from petrol, and it's not as good for your skin as we think. Usually it's really not as good. This is much better if you wanted to use it on your skin. So if you spill some, that's no problem. But it's going to be very useful, as I said, into your craft room, because glycerin, if you mix it with water, it's going to help refresh your ink pads. Not all of them, only the dye-based ink pads. This is important. Don't do this with your chalk-based inks or your pigment, because that's different. I didn't use it yet on the distress. No, what is it called? Not distress, oxides. I don't have any oxides yet. So for that one, I'll need to buy them first because I can't find any here, and then make sure it can work as well. But for all your distress, the mementos, any kind of ink pad that is dye-based ink, that's going to work perfectly. By the way, I usually pour a little bit of this into a smaller bottle in order not to contaminate it, because sometimes I need to just use a little bit with a paintbrush or anything else. So put your at least half of it into a smaller container. In order to refresh your ink pads, what you can do is use, this one is a 100 milliliter spray bottle. If it's not a spray bottle, it's not that important. I usually put in this amount, I think it's 6 ounces. What I do is I put about 2 tablespoons of glycerin and the rest of water, and before using it, you really need to shake it up really well. And if you have a spray, what you can do is just spray on top of your ink pad like this. I'm not going to do it because it's already very inky. Or if you don't have a spray bottle, it's just not really important. You can use a pipette or a dropper, and you can, like a baby jar if you have some, and you can just sprinkle a few drops on your ink pad. Wait a little bit to make sure everything is going to sink into your ink pad. You can use a credit card, for example, an old credit card, and spread it around to make sure it's even. You've got the product everywhere. Wait a little bit, make sure it's working again. So this is just a refresher, which means that sometimes, you know, your ink pads are dry, but there's still the ink there because there's a lot of water also. So if it's dry or you forget to close it very well, maybe the water just disappeared, but it's full of ink. You don't really need to re-ink it. So before re-inking, make sure that you use a little bit of this, unless you know that you've used it a lot. A little bit of this glycerin with water, not pure. Spread it apart, wait 1 or 2 minutes to make sure it's even, and then try to stamp with it. And it works like wonders. I've done this to several of mine, and I always have a bottle ready. So this is good for your ink dye ink pads. Also, but this time you're going to use it pure, you're going to be able to use it on your Versamark ink pads. So this is the brand I use because it's easy to find where I live. That's the good stuff. And usually a lot of people have this brand. It's just your embossing ink for embossing powders. So normally they will work with all of these. For Versamark for sure. I just use a pipette because that's what I have. I take few drops and I put it on top of my ink pad here, and then again with an old credit card I'm going to spread it to make sure it goes everywhere into my pad, because this thing needs to be really juicy to work well, really juicy. So I put a few drops, wait a little bit, see how it goes, if I think I need more, because when you just put your finger there, it should be shiny, really shiny. So, and before doing that, if it's really dry, wash it a little bit with a little bit of soap and water. Dry it completely before adding your glycerin. So again, this is, but that's pure, okay? Just glycerin onto your ink pad. Versamark, for example. So you imagine it's going to work exactly the same way if you have an embossing pen. So again, this one is a Versamark, and I really like that one. The Stampin' Up! Are great too. There's one, I can't remember the brand. It's supposed to write, I mean the embossing is blue and it's supposed to go away when you heat it up. I've tried, it didn't work, it stayed blue. My embossing worked, I mean it didn't melt, but I could see the blue through it, so it's not good. So I just wanted to share this with you. I don't know if it works for you, but the one that is blue for me didn't work at all, and I really don't remember. I think I threw it away. So I have this versamark, and you've got two different tips, one smaller than the other, okay? So what you can do here, if it's completely dry, is you're going to take some pliers, just go here. Usually it works better on the soft one, on the smaller one. Take it apart. It's very easy. Don't need to pull hard. Put few drops here with your pipette into your pen. Again, pure. Maybe you can add just one little tiny drop of water. I usually do it completely pure. Put the nib back up on. Make sure you put it really well. Then the cap, and store it flat. Because I've got two tips here, I always keep my brushes like this, even though they're alcohol or water-based, flat. Because if you put it that way, a moment or another, if you want to use that part, it's not going to run that well. So every time I've got two tips on my pens or my brushes, I keep them flat. And wait for maybe a minute or two, not more, and make sure it works. If you don't think it works enough, put a little bit more and wait 1 or 2 more minutes. It should go very quickly. So very helpful in these two occasions. Also, this is also a pretty good idea to use this glycerin onto your watercolor palettes here. Okay, especially if the brand is not a high quality brand. Usually what happens is that the colors are going to chip. They're going to fall apart. You're going to have colors everywhere. Everything is mixing, and it's a pain in the back, to be honest. If it's a higher quality, normally you shouldn't have the problem. But if it's a student or even lower grade, you're going to have paint everywhere. So in order to prevent that, what helps a lot is using glycerin, or also using honey, because that's what the big bang, the high level, high quality brands do. They add either glycerin or honey to their paint, so it's not going to chip off. So if these are really small, but I hope you can see that some are more shinier than others. That's where I added the glycerin. So you just need to put maybe on these, because they're very small, a drop. If you have bigger palettes like this, use a little bit more, but not too much. Mix it with water. Like I said, it's water soluble, so mix it with your water and your paint, and normally everything should come back together. Honey works as well for this kind of technique, so it's going to help you. And also what I do, this is a traveling one, and I need a travel one, and I need to buy some more, but again, here I couldn't find what I wanted. But anyway, what I don't like is the one that have both paint on both sides and then go like this, because that's the way I find that it breaks even more often. So I prefer to have maybe a longer one, but that only contains the paint on one side. Also because here, that's where I can use a blank space in order to put my water and to put my paint. And I think it prevents a lot of chipping as well. I don't know why, but that's what happened to me, and I wanted to share that with you. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is also glycerin, very useful for acrylic painters. So actually, acrylic dries very quickly. I love acrylic, but it dries very quickly, especially if you live in a very hot place like I do. It's really going to dry very quickly. So what I usually do, and I would recommend doing, whether it's for acrylic or for watercolor, is to have 2 buckets of water. I always have 2 buckets. One to clean my brush, so that water is yicky. Okay, that's when you're painting with, I don't know, green, and you want to change for blue, or you want to change for red. You need to really clean your brush before going to your other color. So that's the yicky bucket of water. And then besides that, I have a clean bucket of water, because if I need to recharge my paintbrush, with water, and I'm still going to use the same color. I just need clean, fresh water for that. And this is where you're going to put some glycerin into. Not for watercolors, no need, but for acrylics, yes. I've tried to put also little drops into my acrylic paint. It didn't work that well. It didn't want to really dry after a certain period of time, so putting too much is not good. You need to make a test. Depending how big your bucket of water is, put few drops to maybe 1 tablespoon, add more if you need to, but it's really going to help make your paint dry last fast or stay wet longer. Whatever you want to say it, okay? It means the same. So that's really helping, because you've got a lot of products out there on the market that will do the trick, but they're very expensive. So maybe give it a try first, and if you're happy with it, keep it. If you are not, maybe go and buy the big product that is more expensive. That's totally up to you. I'm trying to give you some tips here. And also, if you've got some on your hands, it's really good. Don't take it away. Oh, and I've got another tip for you concerning glycerin, is to put it on your stamps. Sometimes, especially the red stamps, some rubber stamps tend to get hard if you don't use them, or maybe the brand was not that great. I happen to have 1 or 2 like that. I don't know why. And they're really not this one, but the red ones. And it became very hard. And when it's hard, you can't really stamp that well, because you need some squish underneath and sometimes on top. So what you can do is use that glycerin, put it on top, put it well. I do usually do this with my finger. Make sure it goes into all these crevices and leave it aside. You can leave it like this few days, make sure it's well done, or maybe a little zip bag to leave it somewhere, because otherwise it's going to have some dust. And normally after a while it's going to reactivate a little bit your rubber, and it's going to be good to use. It will maybe not revive it as it was in the beginning, but it's going to help give it a more squish. I've tried this. I've also managed to massage my stamp to make the glycerin go into it, and it kind of worked. It's not bad. I didn't really have to throw it away, which is a good thing, because rubber stamps tend to be much more expensive than the clear ones. So there you go. There you go. Let me see. I did have a cheat sheet paper. I didn't want to forget anything, but I think I went through everything. So yeah, if you have other tricks using glycerin, please let me know in the comments below. I'll always come back to you. And also give me some thumbs up, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and also share on social medias. Thank you very much. See you soon for other videos. Sorry. Take care. Bye-bye.